Welcome to the Legalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Sager, founder and CEO of Legalpreneur Inc. As a serial entrepreneur and someone that works exclusively with small business owners legally protecting their business, I'm dedicated to covering common legal issues faced by business owners, providing you with the business knowledge you need to catapult your business's growth and showing you just how some of the world's most elite entrepreneurs have handled these legal and business issues themselves. In true attorney fashion, the information in this episode is not legal advice. This is for informational purposes only, and you should always consult with your attorney before implementing any of the information in the show. Hello there. Welcome back to the Legalpreneur Podcast. Today's episode is going to be absolutely amazing. We have the amazing Tarzan K, who is the email copy queen, and I'm so pumped to have her on today. Thanks for joining us, Tarzan.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
Yes, I'm so pumped about this. So go ahead. Let's start out by telling the audience your story, how you got to where you are today.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm a storyteller by trade. That's my real job, even though I write emails. Really, my job is to tell stories. So we could be here for many hours. So here are the Cole's notes. That's a Canadian thing. I'm Canadian. I think in the US, it's maybe Spark Notes.
Spark Notes, Cliff
Notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the Cliff Notes. So I started out, way back early life, I definitely knew that I wanted to be a writer. And I would write that in my school assignments and things that I was going to be a writer. And I've always been a reader. And at some point I was traveling and I saw an ad. I needed work and I saw an ad for a copywriter. And I thought okay, that has writer in it. That seems like something I could do. And so I started picking up freelance work, doing things that really weren't copy at all. I was writing social media updates and blog posts and basically anything that anyone would pay me to write. I would be okay, I'll give it a shot. And I did have some natural writing talent because I had done, at that point, I'd already written a book and I sort of thought of myself as a writer. So I think that helps a lot. And so I was picking up little jobs here and there. And eventually I started to say, okay, now I'm a freelance copywriter, but I wasn't, I didn't do zero legal anything, no contracts, no incorporated business, total flying by the seat of my pants. I wasn't really even taking it seriously. I was just okay, this could help me not get a job. I was maybe 26 or 27, and I was this could be a way for me to not have to be in the prison of a full-time job, which was how I saw it at the time. So I did that for a little bit, and I didn't really get anywhere. And then I met someone and had a child. And then when that child was a year old, my partner, he really didn't know how to make money in retrospect and needed help. And he was okay, why don't you stay home with the child who was 1 year old, our son, and I will start a business. So that I would say was really the beginning of my business, even though there was, some preamble. I wasn't considering myself as a business. I wasn't trying to do anything but put food on the table and, pay rent in the cheapest possible place that I could live in. But now I have a family and now I want things for my family. So right. I rented an office and I started taking programs and learning about how to be a copywriter and also how to be a business owner. So I started out writing copy and then very quickly found that I was really interested in the world of online courses and this whole idea of passive income, which it took me a while to figure out is really not passive at all, but that's how it's sold. And I really discovered that I had a real talent for email marketing and I really enjoy email marketing. So I really leaned into that in my early copywriter days and started emailing my list. And then I think I incorporated my business in my second year. So in 2017, I was maybe 18 months in business. I guess I probably did that on the advice of my accountant, but also I just thought it made me feel more official. And people told me when they incorporated their businesses that something shifted. And I didn't really see it at the time, but in retrospect, like it does really mean something to me to be an incorporated business. And it is different. Like I don't think about myself, like when people say, oh, you're self-employed, I'm like, no, I'm not self-employed. I have a business and it employs people, including me. So the business employs me. I do not employ myself. So then a couple years in, I had been doing all this copywriting, emails and sales pages for clients. And I started to really want to do that myself. And also I saw that like I have this incredible skill that's really fundamental to selling things online, and I should probably sell my own things. So it took a few years of transitioning into that and creating my own courses. And now I have 4 people who work for me, and 3 of them are employees, and one of them is a contractor. But she actually is my business manager, and she runs the show. So even though she's a contractor, she's integral to the business. Like nobody comes to me to ask if they could like have a holiday in the summer. They go to her. So now there are 5 of us, and we have 2 programs. One that teaches copywriting skills. That's more of a beginner program. And then we have another program that we open every June that teaches email marketing skills to course creators, service providers, product-based businesses, really all sorts of types of business owners.
I love that. That's amazing. I love that you've shifted over and over in order to find your sweet spot. And I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated and end up quitting, is because, you know, maybe it doesn't work out the first time, or the second time they're like, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to go get a 9-to-5 and live in that prison. So kudos to you for not giving up and really continuing to shift until you really found your sweet spot. So I have so many things that I want to dive into. But number one, I really want to touch really quickly on self-employed versus being a business owner, because so many people continue to view themselves as being self-employed when they need to change that mindset, because it, like having that shift between just not being an official business versus being incorporated. I think that's another, like the next level shift is actually being self-employed versus being a business owner. I want to hear your take on that. Can you riff on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the probably as big as incorporating my business was the moment when I decided to pay myself a paycheck. And then I think that really was a shift for me from seeing myself as like self-employed and what money the business has is what money I have. It's almost like there's a whole identity, and incorporated, self-employed, like it is easy to have your identity wrapped up in your business. I've definitely been there. However, being incorporated and not being a self-employed business owner, that definitely has helped me keep my identity separate from my business. And even financially, like I remember in my marriage, my husband being confused and thinking that the money that the business had was ours. Like he saw that as our money. And I was like, no. The business has this amount of money. Like even my language changed. Like there was a point when I'd be like, oh my God, I have this much money in the bank. Or like, cause I was surprised. I hadn't made money my whole life. So that was a really important shift to see like, no, that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the business. It's its own thing. It has its own needs, and it pays me. I am the leader, but I'm also an employee of that business. So I need to, like, you know, as anyone who has a job wants their employer to be in like a healthy financial position. That it does really change the way you operate when you are, whether you're incorporated or not, just thinking about the business as the business and yourself as yourself who works for the business.
Yeah, no, I love that differentiation, because there's so many mindset shifts that we have to make in business, especially if you didn't come from money. Like same with me. There's like right now, literally there's like they say, new levels, different devils. And right now, just getting from, the multi-million mark to the 10-figure mark and then to the 100 million, like every level you have to make so many different mindset shifts. And I believe part of the reason why some people don't get there is because they're not willing to do the work in their mindset. It's not just like doing the work in business. There's only so much work you can do in business. It's just internal after some point. So there's a lot of mindset. Obviously, there's a lot of mindset stuff that goes into this. But okay, let's shift to the actual copywriting. So I know you have the email marketing course coming up. And I know you said the other copy course is more for beginners. So who is this upcoming course? Who is this for?
So I would say half of our students would identify as online business owners. So that could be a lot of things. That could be selling services online. It could be selling digital products. It could be selling courses. Actually, that is most of our people. We've been expanding it this year so that we can reach product-based business owners. Because the interesting thing about email is like most of what I teach is applicable to any business. Like every business owner that I meet would be like my chiropractor, like some brick and mortar store down the road. I'm like, like, especially those that collect email addresses, but don't use them. I'm like, there is so much untapped potential there. So a lot of what we teach it is applicable to anyone. It's like how to nurture your email subscribers, how to format your emails, how to write subject lines that get opened, like how to improve your deliverability. A lot of it is like really the essentials that every business needs. But then we do go into specifics of like how to get people on a webinar, how to get them to show up to a webinar, how to write sales emails, like even onboarding new customers. It's really, we go through like the customer journey from the time someone joins your email list to all the way to them becoming a customer and then delivering on your offer and then moving on to the next thing. And I think that is something that every business needs, but a lot of businesses don't think about. We just think like your customer walked in the door and they got their thing and now they went out the door. But like now it's like so much easier to get that person to come back than it is to get a new person. What I really love, and I think what's unique about the way that I do email is it's really story centric. It's really like my emails are entertaining. It's like you might learn something without even knowing that you learned something, or you might just open it because you're going to enjoy reading it. And I really use email for relationship building, like for building trust with my email subscribers and my future customers.
Nice. That's amazing. And we're honestly internally at Legalpreneur, we're finding that our emails need to take it up a notch. So we may be interested in this course because we're really trying to segment a lot of our lists and bring in I feel like we're leaving a lot of money on the table with people on our list. I mean, we have 15,000 subscribers, and I feel like there's a lot more that we can be doing with who we have on our list. So definitely might be,
Just a little bit of email segmentation can really go a long way. Like you have your customers from your programs, right? Like the most obvious segment would be like your customers who've bought your like sort of base level product and then would like they've been through that, they have some fundamentals and they would be ready for the next thing. Like, or even segments of people based on how they came in to your email list. Like, did they buy something? Did they download a free thing? Like mapping all of that out in your head and really having a plan can make a huge difference. Like 15,000 subscribers is enormous untapped potential. And even for people that only have we do get a lot of people that are just coming in, and to those people, like having knowing what you're doing from the beginning, and for a lot of people that come into our program, they're like the back end of their email service provider is just like it's just like a big pile of people. They're not sorted or they're not like tagged correctly, or like we don't know who anyone is, like being able to know, to like correctly tag people so you have some information about them. Like people, email subscribers are actually can be pretty easily impressed. Like you gather a couple details about them, like they took this quiz, they got this result, they bought this product, like boom, I could do something very customized with that information.
Yeah, and that's critical because I know I can tell the difference when I'm reading a very, very general email versus a very targeted email. So a couple questions about email specifically. Do you have one or two top email providers? Like who do you suggest to use for sending emails?
Well, it really depends on what you're doing with email. So we use a program called ActiveCampaign, and we love ActiveCampaign. I started out, so I sell courses, and that's pretty relevant. Like I sell courses, we're building sales funnels. We do like a lot of advanced segmentation and tagging and like conditional formatting. So I might write one email, but I want certain subscribers to read this line this way and others to read this line this way. So ActiveCampaign is I think it's a great email service provider. However, I do not even log in, like ever. I don't know how to do anything in ActiveCampaign. Prior to moving to ActiveCampaign, we had ConvertKit, and ConvertKit was what I signed up to when I started my business. And that's when I did everything myself. And I was, doing all the tagging and segments and automations and all those things. And I did find ConvertKit pretty easy to use. However, it does have limitations. But ActiveCampaign, on the other hand, has like a steeper learning curve. And for e-commerce, like I hear really great things about Klaviyo. Klaviyo seems to be sort of the e-commerce standard, although there are just so many. And one thing that I say to people if they're already doing email marketing and they already have a system, like when you leave one system for another, like you have to rebuild your server reputation from scratch. So it can hurt your deliverability. And also, like, do you really need to? Like, we were with ConvertKit and, the team was growing. Our ability to do complex things was growing. And, I kept coming to meetings and being like, I want to do this. What about this? What about this? And enough times that Sandra, she's my business manager, Sandra Booker, she would say, like, if we had ActiveCampaign, we could do that. And we must have waited like at least a year before we switched. So I just like, it's such a job to switch. Like if you can work with what you have, like if you started with MailChimp, like plenty of 7-figure business owners use MailChimp. Like you can use that tool. There's usually a way to do what you need to do. And sometimes I wonder, honestly, I'm like, do we need this level of complexity? Like maybe like something that I've been really thinking a lot about lately is Substack. So Substack, if you don't know, is a platform for sending email. It's sort of like it was developed for journalists so they could monetize their work with a paid newsletter. And it's like the simplest possible email service provider. Like it doesn't do any not that it doesn't do any fancy things. It is growing, but the idea is that it's really simple. Like you can start an email newsletter in 5 minutes, literally. And you can start a paid newsletter and they will handle like all the customer service, all the payments, all those things. Like it's a really, I think for someone who's obsessed with email, like Substack is a really interesting proposition because I think everybody should have an email newsletter, even if they're like in a career, just like, why not? Like if you want to do some sort of like thought leadership and brand building, well, like you should have an email list. And Substack makes it really easy. So I like, and this is not a paid advertisement for Substack. I want to note, like, not every, like, for some people, like if you came into Email Stars, you'd be like, wow, this is like awesome. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. I'm going to get my team in there. We're going to streamline it all. And people do that. Most people don't have a team and they do it on their own. However, I also see another category of people who are like, I need this to be way simpler. And I think like, that's what I like about Substack. And also I just want to say, like, that's a legitimate way of doing email marketing too. It's like, it can be simple. It can just be like your letters to your people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So copywriting specifically, do you have like your top like 1 to 3 tips that you can share with the audience about copywriting? Because I know we're all like, I love to talk about the legal stuff, and I tell people, hey, you're great at your craft, you're great at making money, but you're not an expert in everything. So if you're not at the point to hire everything out, you've got to learn how to DIY these things. So what are some tips to help them DIYing their own copy?
Okay, great. I'm glad you're telling them that, because I do think it's really hard to sell, especially if you're online. Like, there's so much writing. It is a skill that you really need to develop. And the better you can write about your product, the better you can talk about your product too. So, okay. So let me see. What would my top tips be? I guess the first thing would be to use a framework, or use something that works. Like, let's say for a sales page, for example, a sales page is a pretty advanced piece of copy to write. Like, a long form sales page, usually it goes through like several stages, like a really common copywriting framework. I actually don't like this, but I'll explain why in a second. Problem, agitation, solution. So like, we lay out the problem and then we sort of poke at it a little bit and then solve it. I did hear a copywriter, I think her name is Natalia Sanyal, talk about problem, empathize, like problem, empathy, solution. Like, so I think there's a softer way of looking at that, but we do need to clearly lay out what the problem is, and then like add some depth to that, and then bring people toward the solution. So, and that is hard to do if that's all you have. So, but however, if you have someone else's sales page, like I use a screenshot tool in Google. It's just a Chrome extension. I think it's called Full Page Screen Capture, or no, pardon me, it's called Go Full Page. And I just like, if I'm looking at a sales page that I really like, I will grab a screen capture and then I will look at it, not to copy it, but to look at it and see like, why do I like, what is it about this that's working for me? Like, to see if you can like use that flow. And the same could be like for a website or something like that. So that's tip number 1, use a framework or some swipe copy. Start with that. Number two is my favorite, which is to use concrete details as often as possible. So it's, let's say I'm writing an email and I'm telling a story about getting up at 5 a.m. and trying to be a 5 a.m. person. Okay. I am sort of a flunky 5 a.m. person. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but I am at this stage of my life. So let's say I'm writing that email and I could say like, it's 5 a.m. I'm really tired and I'm struggling to get into my work today. That's one way that I could say it. Or I could say, okay, this is going to be longer. So, and I'm improvising. I'm not writing. However, I could say,
you're good. This is
it's
great.
5 a.m. Okay. It's 5 a.m. My alarm is screeching from the hallway where it sits on top of the cabinet, flashing red lights or something like that. That's not actually what my phone does, but there's some tactile details in there. Like it's screeching. I hear that. The alarm that's coming from my phone, I hear that. Things I can picture, like the phone, like flashing, all those tactile details. Like I'm trying to immerse people in the experience. And then I might say like, my room is dark. I pull on yesterday's pants, even though there's a coffee stain on the leg. Like little details like that, like those are what bring a story to life and make people feel something. Instead of saying, I'm tired, I'm saying like, my pants are dirty. Like I'm putting on dirty pants because I didn't have time to do laundry yesterday. Like I'm painting a picture. Like we could be, as you can see from this example, I'm a little bit overwhelmed in my life right now. But instead of saying like, I'm overwhelmed, it's like, there's toys all over the floor. I've got my laptop on my lap, and also my kid just jumped on my back and wants me to play with him. Like, that is a story instead of like we hear all the time, like, I'm overwhelmed. This is tiring. Yeah, you can see that. So that's really those concrete details. You can see them, you can feel them. Like, I think about sensory things, tactile things. So that'd be number 2. And number 3, just so that we don't overwhelm people too much, let's continue with this, is like, using stories to draw, like, to pull some emotion through the story, through your, whatever you're getting to. So, that, let's say it's an email and it's a lesson about how beneficial it is to have a miracle morning or whatever. Like, instead of saying, here are the key benefits of the miracle, here's what the miracle morning is, and here are the key benefits, and here's why you should try this. Like, that's great as an email. However, it feels like a job. And one of the ways that you can make it less of a job is to paint a picture of, like, tell a story of what has that been like for you, and then segue into, like, that's why I recommend the miracle morning practice, and it's XYZ. Like, when people think about email marketing specifically, they often think about, like, value. I have to give value. So what is value? And then the default is like, well, value must be tips. It must be hacks. Yeah. It must be this. So I'm going to send an email telling people to do this 3-step thing. Well, that's not value to me. That's like a job. And I don't want to open your emails if you're giving me jobs to do. People get value in all sorts of ways. Like, people want to be entertained. They want to feel something. I think one of the, like, interesting value that my subscribers get is connection. It's like, they really, when they get emails from me, I know they feel like deeply connected to my stories and our mission as a company. And that's something that people don't even know they're looking for. And also, it took me 6 years of writing emails to realize, like, oh, that's what they're coming here for, to, like, really deeply feel something and connect. So I think it's important. Yeah. I'm talking about emails, but also in copy, just to really question, like, what is the value you're bringing? Because value comes in many forms.
Yeah, and it's so crazy talking about how our audience connects more with our story. Anytime I talk on social media about, like, my personal healing journey, I get so much feedback. Like, last week, I literally had a panic attack at the mall, and I just went on stories on Instagram and talked about it. And I had so many people that were reaching out, like, you're doing so well, like, it's okay. Like feedback about anything and everything. And every single time I do that, where something big comes up for me, like, as I've been healing over the past year and a half, I'm like, people are not going to want to hear this. I just feel called to share this. And yeah, people are just flocking to it. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said about it. I don't know if do you have any insight on that? Do you think it, like, triggers their own emotions? It's bringing up emotion for them, or are they just like the authenticity?
I think I think we're wired for connection as humans. And yeah. I think what I've noticed, like, when I share things about myself, other people want to share back. Like, I'm really in ways that really blow me away. Like, I think we're all, like, longing for connection and belonging. And especially in the entrepreneurial world, where there's just, like, it can be very showy. And I mean, and social media is this way as well. So, like, when we're so attuned to those moments of humanity, and if you can be if you can be more of yourself, then I can too. I recently, in our last promotion, I wrote like a 9-part email sequence about being a cult survivor. And it was a long story that, like, started in childhood and went, to a lot of different places, including, like, my work with psychedelics, and then, like, hiring a cult leader to be my coach, and, like, it went to a lot of places. And I was very, like, I've never been so open and vulnerable with my email list. And that's really saying something for me, because I am very open. So this was a whole new level. And it was also like a whole new level of connection. Like the stories that my subscribers shared with me, in some cases, they shared things that they had never shared with anyone else. And sometimes I didn't even know their names. It was just like a random subscriber to my email list that was deeply moved and wanted to share something back. So I really do think we're just wired that way. And for me, like, those people don't always become customers. And as like, it's not a sales strategy, it's a connection strategy. And that to me is what really makes business worthwhile. Like that's what I love the most. And that is as valuable to me as getting the most sales possible.
Yeah, I love that. I knew you'd have some insight there. It's like, this is a good question. But yeah, connection, that's what it's all about. So thank you for that. So before we wrap up here, I like to ask everybody one question, and that is, what is your number one business tip? Doesn't have to be about legal stuff, copywriting, just your number one business tip that you can give anybody off the road.
Like a couple of years ago, I think I might have been going through a hard moment in my business, and my brother, who is also a business, had sold it now, but had a manufacturing business. And he said to me, like, man, like, I reckon people who are successful in business, they're just like the ones that are able to stay alive long enough, like that just keep going. So I think that's like something that has really stuck with me. And actually, even right now, like at this moment of this interview, we're going through a really challenging moment in business. And it's easy to say, just keep going when you're like doing really well. However, like I've had a lot of hard moments of wanting to quit. And so I'm telling this to your listeners, but also to myself, like to keep going through those hard moments. Those hard moments are inevitably the ones where you get the biggest growth. Like those, my biggest failures, and I look back on them, I'm like, no, that was so important to this thing that happened next. And it's hard. You don't know what happens next. You just have to trust and keep going. So I guess my number one piece of advice is just don't quit.
I love that. Amazing. I love it. Yes, we are all going through a lot. I know you in particular, we're both going through a lot. But tell the listeners where they can find out more about you, where, if they are interested in your courses, where can they sign up? Give us all the things.
Okay, so we're doing a series of workshops starting on May 26th, which you can sign up to at theemailworkshops.com. We're going to teach about writing a welcome sequence. I'm going to teach about metrics for email marketers. And I'm also going to do a workshop on storytelling. And it's going to be really, it's going to be like informal, no slide decks, no like, it will be unpolished and you can show up and work and get some work done and learn about email marketing. I do it once a year, and it's one of my favorite things that we do because it just feels organic and fun. And there's a Facebook group, and people can just hang out and get into email. I also just want to say, we have many freebies and free things, but if you go to tarzank.com/join, you can join my email list just to get the emails. And I think I would recommend that more than any freebie that we have, although there are some on our website. But I think what we're doing with email is unique and interesting. And I think email is where I do my best work and my best writing, and it's geared toward business owners of all stripes. So that would, the emailworkshops.com, and then my email list, tarzank.com/join.
Perfect. We will put all that in the show notes, so don't worry about writing it down. And Tarzan, thank you so, so much for joining us today. And I wish you all the luck on everything you have coming up.
Thanks, Andrea.
Here at Legalpreneur, we're committed to providing a supportive legal community for all business owners. I know how scary the legal stuff can be. If you found this information helpful, I would be so grateful if you could share it with a fellow business owner. And quite frankly, it doesn't cost anything to rate, review, or subscribe to the show. Your support helps me reach more listeners, which allows me to support more business owners in their entrepreneurial journey. Have any questions or comments about the show? Feel free to drop me a line on Instagram. I promise I read all of the messages and comments. And if you want to be a guest on the show or know someone that would make a great guest, simply fill out our application form and a team member will reach out if we think it's a good fit. I'll see you in the next episode.